It can be hard to push yourself when it feels like no one is watching, but for Kyna competing in the grand finals of the Brawlhalla World Championship, the crowd was filled with people just to watch him play. It was almost easy to forget it wasn't always like this for Kyna. Only 2 years ago, at the same event, hardly anyone can be seen watching Kyna play on the main stage. Due to most of the tournaments being online that year, Kyna's rise to the top of the South American power rankings was shockingly fast, but also largely underrated. He would just have to show it to those watching what he could really do. If he wins this set on stage, it'll be the first time a player from a third region would enter the top 8 of BCX. Now, with this being Kyna's first LAN performance, no one really has any idea how he will do.
We've all been waiting to see what Kyna can do. Everyone knows Kyna's a force. Kyna's kind of nice, haha. But I kind of want to. I don't know. I don't want. I'm like, I love Radish. I really do love Radish, but Kyna, I don't know.
Now, as you may have listened, that wasn't really the most convincing hype-up speech I've ever heard before. But the time for speculation is over. This is where Kyna can convince those watching on just how good he really is. In that process of proving how good he is, Kyna is unfortunately 0 games to 2, so he makes a legend swap to Koji. And in all of my time watching Brawlhalla matches, legend swaps are usually never a good sign, especially when in the past, Kyna has not been very successful swapping over to Koji. Pulling it off here on the main stage I think would entirely change the way many people view Kyna. Using a backup character to a 0 to 2 deficit is something that many people would view as nearly impossible odds. After being down 0 to 2, he reverse sweeps Radish, and I don't mean to be rude here, but as a Brawlhalla intellectual, I knew this would happen. It's a lot like when the Fire Nation invaded the Water Tribe. At first it was a bit of a struggle because it's water, but then they figured it out and incinerated like tons of villages. Kyna in a similar way had to figure out a solution in order to beat Radish. After BCX, I will be attending one more tournament this year. It's the PLATFIGHT Gaming Championships. This end of the year tournament will celebrate 6 different platform fighting titles, such as Brawlhalla, Smash Melee, Smash Ultimate, Rivals of Aether 2, Multiverses, and Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. This tournament will be from December 13th to the 15th. I'll personally be there so that I can watch Brawlhalla players compete in a brand new tournament, but I will also get to watch competitors from different titles that I've never got the chance to see. I think it'd be kind of cool to watch Hungrybox compete for Smash at the same venue where I get to watch Brawlhalla. Now the location is in Kissimmee, Florida. The PLATFIGHT Gaming Championships will have various experienced organizers running the events, such as AJ Moore, known for his Moose Wars tournaments. If you're interested in attending, use code Vondakay for $5 off registration at platfight.com to register. Kyna making it into the top 8 of BCX does have some downsides I didn't really think about. His first match is against the best player in Europe. Godly was a player widely expected to win this entire tournament.
I don't really do much, to be honest. I kind of just tell myself I'm the best or I'm the GOAT, and then I just kind of go in and just keep cool.
Believe it or not, that's actually a pretty good mindset for playing this game competitively. He's won every tournament he's entered besides one. And for Kyna, this would undoubtedly be the hardest match in his entire career, and now that he's in front of an actual crowd, my only question is, will the match even be close? While both of these players are respectively rank 1, I hold Godly at such a higher standard because of the way he achieved his status. Kyna had still been developing through the top 8 while Godly was collecting $6,000 checks each tournament, and he did that while cycling through many different legends. This endless onslaught of defending his title in Europe did make Godly particularly vulnerable to the more aggressive style that Kyna played with. On top of this, Kyna has continuously chosen to develop as mainly a sword player. Maybe the only matchup where these two aren't even would be with a sword ditto, and Kyna knows this as he's continuously starving Godly of any weapon. Watching Godly and Kyna play is a bit like the kid versions of Naruto and Sasuke. They're talented and supposed to be evenly matched until one of them pulls out some crazy unfair advantage. That's exactly what Godly's gonna have to do. He's gonna have to fall back on one of his best strengths. Obviously, in this example, I'd probably be like Kakashi or something calm like that. There's really no reason to argue about it. And after Godly loses the first game, he swaps to Petra to use that same orb that was obviously bothering Kyna earlier. Still with limited matchup experience, Kyna is dismantled game after game, losing 1-3 to Godly over one legend swap. Sort of similar to how Kyna swapped in order to beat Radish, but with Godly, it felt like he just needed to be pushed far enough in order for him to make any change, whereas Kyna was forced into having to adapt. With this loss, Kyna is knocked into losers, where he'll meet a part of the reason he lacked such a crowd in his first main stage match. Stingray just so happened to be taking the attention when he was beating the previous world champion Sandstorm on a side stream game. It was actually fairly close, but Stingray seems to excel in these types of situations where others would crumble under pressure. Even since the beginning, he's made a name for himself after featuring in numerous upsets where others would likely be more intimidated. Also, like Kyna, Stingray uses a lot of aggressive movement to pressure out options from his opponents in order to punish them. The biggest difference though is he does it while wielding two much larger and slower weapons, one of them being the Rocket Lance. The more exciting horizontal movement of Lance that applies a lot of pressure on its opponents while also moving the users became a favorite of many players, especially a lot of those in South America who have been competing with Lance for years now, many of which you'll find are responsible for ending numerous amounts of Kyna's bracket runs. And after years of dealing with basically torture from a weapon like this, Kyna had developed a solution. He would lock in Zol to face Stingray, a pick only specific for this matchup that uses no sword but instead cannon and axe. It's a bit of an odd pick, seeing as how Kyna prefers quick moving weapons that he can find the most punishes with the easiest. To my understanding, the idea with cannon and axe is that they have such incredible attack options to hit opponents beneath them and right above them that they're perfect against the lance, which moves awkwardly a few feet off the ground or on it horizontally. And with all that said, it only matters if Kyna can actually hit the punishes, which is exactly what he's best at.
Stops almost half of the moves that Lance likes to do. I mean,
For all that time I spent talking about Lance against cannon and axe, Kyna may not have been too familiar with something important about Stingray. Lance is not what many people would say is his best weapon. In fact, he almost always prefers to use the spear in most cases over Rocket Lance. And while Kyna's plan has been working so far, you can never count out Stingray in these situations. Managing to grab his spear at just the right time in the beginning of their match, he takes the first stock. Then as soon as possible on his next stock, he tosses away Lance to grab another spear. And for the rest of that match, he plays it perfectly, spacing everything he needs to. This now leads us to a Game 5 match, and no one was ready for what was about to happen.
recovery. He goes to the exhausted with the side hit.
So bad. He's got it. He's betting it all. He's betting it all. Can he do it? Can he stop Kyna? Or will Kyna close his dreams out here? And Stingray is so goddamn clutch.
Stingray from an entire start.
I'm afraid the results of such a crazy, dramatic, and heartbreaking loss has literally made me sick. This ending of Kyna's run at BCX was shocking. No one really cared to mention finally bringing a third region into BCX finals, or the fact that Kyna's loss was only one hit away from making it into the top 4. And at the same time of this happening to Kyna, the rest of the tournament only gets weirder. The 10th best player in North America surprisingly wins all of BCX. This was also shocking once again, to say the least. So rather than Kyna just having an increase in motivation for the next year, so did the very top level of Brawlhalla's competitive player base. These players included the Brawlhalla previous 2-time world champion Sandstorm, the current BCX champion now Impala, the #1 player in North America Luna, and the #1 player in Europe Godly. The invite-only Winter Royale didn't care that Kyna qualified without dropping a single match. Both Luna and Godly would defeat Kyna, with Luna even going on to win the entire tournament. And in the following open land tournament of San Diego, despite Kyna having an incredible losers run, as soon as he ran into Sandstorm, it was clear he couldn't keep up. And to make matters slightly worse, the only player outside of those I mentioned who could keep up was fellow South American player Use. At this point, it was clear Kyna knew he had to make a change. By looking at what he did best, the decision was simple: swap Swapping over to Taros would give Kyna one of the hardest hitting legends to feed into his consistent punishes. However, the character wouldn't be as fast as the others he had previously used, so Kyna had to have complete confidence in each move he made, and with this mindset added to Kyna's play, he looked unstoppable. Watching Kyna crush his summer championship bracket is like when Zuko had to look within himself to bend lightning. By trusting oneself, he would become stronger. Now obviously I stole this from Uncle Iroh, but I think it's fitting because now that I'm sicker, I sound more older and wise. Not only was Kyna looking stronger at his home region's tournaments, but upon winning all this summer championship and getting an invite to the Royale, it was like watching an entirely different player. While he did stumble in the beginning, losing to Wes and Stingray, the only two Boots players at the tournament, Kyna found himself defeating Sandstorm and Godly with ease in the round robin part of the bracket. It wasn't totally unexpected for a South American player to be a threat at these tournaments. Having Hughes already won the Spring Royale in the months prior, as well as Dallas, largely took the attention off of anything significant from Kyna's bracket run. However, it was the total overkill that Kyna had on one player in particular that caught the attention of those watching. While their first match wasn't streamed, Kyna kicked off his tournament run by beating Godly 3-0 for seeding. Then again in the top 4 of the tournament, Godly and Kyna would have to face each other as the two most successful players so far. And try to remember that Godly upon first facing Kyna would defeat him back at BCX, as merely a stepping stone to reach the grand finals. However, at the Summer Royale, something's clearly changed. The same aggression that would lead to Kyna's only win over Godly previously now seemed more present than ever, and the confidence in his reads seemed to only further annoy Godly with each knockout. I mean, come on, 9-0? And Kyna wasn't untouchable after this. You can't be All Might all the time. But prior to this change in his attitude and how he played Brawlhalla, he would struggle to compete with players such as Godly. It was all building to what would look like an incredibly close World Championship coming up at the end of the year. As the day of BCX 2023 starts, various top names were predicted to do well, of course, but it truly felt like this was Kyna's time. The World Championship would be his, and it would be the perfect retribution towards how the first one ended. From the start, there was quite the large target on Kyna's back as he came into this tournament extremely confident. Kyna could be seen taunting in some of his matches and even gave Flower some words of motivation before their game.
Bro, you don't know. He called me a son of a bitch in Portuguese before the set.
For a lot of them, taunting and trash talking helps them stay in that overly confident mindset. But for some of the other competitors, they like to stay silent and let the game speak for themselves. Yuz had been tearing through his bracket like Shen tearing down the Panda Village, and he was starting to gather a lot of attention specifically for just how brutal he was beating up well-known names. At first, his matches were just kind of a slow burn, but it was clear he was winning. As Yuz began to warm up, his confidence was rising too, and a confident Yuz is a very scary thing to face. What really makes Yuz even more difficult to face is the way he moves. Yuz will not only pressure you with his movement as he hops around the map, but commonly he'll take the opportunity to move quite close to you but never actually attack. It makes it terribly hard to predict when he'll throw out a move, and this makes him even more difficult to punish. Mix that in with the fact that he's incredible on many underplayed yet strong weapons and characters, and you get a bracket run that looks like this.
The variation, always keeping you guessing. It's almost.
Due to rather inconsistent placings after winning Dallas, Hughes was absolutely not expected to be doing this good. However, still in comparison to Kyna, he had won that big open-to-entry land that was Dallas, and won the first Royale for South America. These were achievements Kyna honestly looked more promising to do first, but fell short. And while Hughes had achieved both these things, still, like I mentioned, he was not really a top pick for BCX. Kyna's more dominant win being recent did buy him some favoritism as the better player, and his bracket runs seemed to be getting only easier and easier for him, even including right up until, well, Hughes. Kyna had been used numerous times online that year, whether it was in the grand finals of an online tournament or at a LAN in San Diego. Regardless, Kyna has had to sit on the sidelines as Hughes has won various huge first-time achievements for South America, and of course the only one remaining being BCX. The same caster that predicted Kyna to win that day, TK Breezy, said he believed in upsets. Either way, someone from South America would win the tournament. Well, if that tells you anything, that's how this match was viewed. It was two underdogs who weren't totally expected to go any further. Now, given the casters didn't have me there to spread my Fire Nation wisdom, I would have said that Kyna has proven he can defeat everyone at this tournament, and Hughes would just be that last barrier he would have to push past to win it all. The movement between Hughes and Kyna seemed almost extrally cautious. I think it becomes even more interesting when you think about how much experience they have against each other, but they've probably never played for a match that mattered this much. And if both the players play the way they typically do, well, Kyna would win just off the fact that he's won the majority of the times that year. He's incredible at downloading his opponent's habits, and that's how he makes those confident, calculated punishes on moves the other player just started to throw out. Knowing this, Hughes starts to adjust his playstyle. His greatsword is no longer those standard attack strings, but rather starts to become very vertical and stays in the air trying to hit D-like to nair. He's constantly weapon starving Kyna and keeping pressure on him even while he's unarmed. More simply put, Hughes is just trying to mess with Kyna, and it's working. Kyna, while keeping it close in stock count, would lose to Hughes as he switched things up in a way he couldn't adapt in time. Reminds me of some of the people I've met in the Fire Nation. There's a lot of switching up that happens over there. My nephew, my brother, it's not really important. Even though Kyna had fallen into losers and his upcoming matches were technically supposed to be upsets, it kind of felt like he knew he just had to get back to facing Hughes. By this point in the tournament, it seems like whether they believe it or not, one or two of the players are just playing better that day. And for Kyna, anybody who wasn't Hughes wouldn't be a problem, regardless if it was an upset. Sandstorm would lose 3-0, and Godly, despite swapping through multiple legend picks, would only be able to win one match, losing 3-1. Getting taunted on in BCX after losing is also probably a pretty terrible feeling, but then again, it's probably the most Kyna way of making it to grand finals, where now either way someone from South America would win this tournament. That's what they said, right? It came down to these two players who have faced each other all year. This is Kyna's last hurdle to jump, and this is Hughes' last chance to defend himself from someone that's beat him numerous times. Even though Hughes looks unstoppable now, Kyna has beaten him since the beginning of the year all the way to the end. It was all up to who could do it just on the world stage. I don't even care that Hughes won and brought pride to his home region, being the first to win a BCX trophy, because I'm so emotionally cold and distant and nonchalant, and it's not like the greatest thing ever. But as I see Kyna raise Hughes' hand, it does remind me just how remarkable it is he's come so close to being definitively the best player in the world, just to fall a little short. He wasn't the first to win a Royale that year, or the first to do it for his region. He would top 3 each major LAN he attended, but he never won. And in the first time he reached grand finals, a player that he faced numerous times surpassed him at the finish line. And I know that sounds rough, But for Kyna, it actually made the future pretty clear. If he was just this close to being the best in the world, why not just prove it to everybody next year? He had achieved everything he set out to do. And the recognition was there too. Kyna was looked at as the guy, the best in the game, after years of just barely being eclipsed by others. He even won an open LAN tournament, which was the mid-season championship at CEO. And don't freak out like I'm skipping such a big tournament arc, okay? The grand finals was less than 10 minutes long. There was no tournament arc here. It was the volleyball scene from Avatar. No one stood a chance. Well, almost no one. Immediately after the mid-season championship, heading into the autumn tournaments, Kyna can still be seen losing. It's just primarily to Use. Use would continue to beat Kyna online and at the royales for the rest of the year. And while both of them entered this year's BCX in what felt like a tier of their own, Use would win 2024 as now a back-to-back world champion. However, the most interesting part to me was the final speech Use gave on what it meant to win. It was about hitting barriers and having the mindset to keep pushing through these challenges. All the while, Kyna can be seen in the background wrapping up his keyboard, quite literally listening to his barrier at that moment. And the only thing I can hope for now is that Kyna will tell us next year how great it feels to finally push past that barrier towards world champion. I'm unfortunately extremely sick. I wish this could be longer, but this is my retelling of Kyna's story. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe.